Hi guys, John from TheDiceStormers here, bringing you another episode of Quick Tips. This week we're going to be talking a little bit about how I develop RPG adventures. Cue explosion! So it's a little less formal than I usually do for RPG Quick Tips. I've got a sheet of paper here with a few notes, and what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk you through how I craft an adventure. So how do I start thinking about the concepts and all the way through to fleshing it out. So it's going to be a fairly quick run through, but I just thought you might be interested in seeing how I develop it. And I thought rather than just go through a checklist of these tasks that need to be ticked off, I thought what I'd do is I'll show you a Pathfinder adventure which I'm developing, and it may not ever see the light of day, but this is an adventure which I've started to write up, and I thought I'll break it down for you. So how I start is I usually start with an initial concept of an idea. So this could be a spark of something that, a concept that I really like the idea of, that I've seen on TV, or I've just had a brainwave one day and thought, oh, wouldn't that be great to be able to do X, Y, or Z in a game? And one of these ideas I had was one for Pathfinder, where I was watching Hellboy 2, and I really liked that idea of the broken stone giant that's towards the end of the movie, and you can see the scattered parts of his body across the landscape. And I thought, wouldn't that be a great concept for a Pathfinder adventure, stumbling upon this broken giant? And I thought, well, rather than a giant, in the Pathfinder setting that we're creating, it's a lot of gods in it. So this broken god, this forgotten god, which is scattered across the landscape, and the players stumble upon this god. And I thought, what a great idea to build an adventure around. So that was my initial idea, and then I thought in more general terms about, well, what kind of theme would I want for this adventure? Do I want it to be an action-packed story? Do I want it to be a story that's more, well, story-driven? So there's more narrative to it. There's more talking to NPCs. And I thought I'd like it to be a more action-style adventure, and I want to have some definite emotions that come across in it. So I wanted to have things like sadness, and this idea of anger and revenge, this bitterness that comes up from this poor forgotten god. So those were the kinds of things I went with to start with. And then I moved on to, well, what's the basic concept behind it? So I looked at, well, how does it start and where does it go? And so I like the idea of it being a stormy kind of night, and the players are seeking refuge somewhere, and they stumble across an outcrop of rocks, and they make shelter there in a safety away from the wind and the rain. And then the rocks are actually the hand of the god, and they close shut on the player characters, and they trap them there. And this god tells part of his story about how he was broken and who did it, and how he wants revenge for the one who did him wrong. And he asks the player characters for their help in seeking revenge on his behalf. And he offers them rich rewards, he offers them stone weapons that they can use to be able to defeat this person who killed him, who shattered him across the landscape. And hopefully the player characters will say yes, and with enough financial incentive and an emotional incentive, they should take the bait. So once I've got the basic concept of that, and it's a simple story of the player characters tracking down this person who killed this god and seeking revenge on them, I thought, well, that's a great initial concept. And then I like to add into my adventures a twist of some kind. I like to have it so that the player characters, or the players really, don't know where the story is going to go, and they have a basic idea, and then those ideas are broken and they have to readjust. So I thought, well, what kind of twist do I want to have in this? And I thought, well, I've got this shattered god, and I imagine him over the centuries becoming more and more bitter, and perhaps he was a great god, a good god, if we're using an alignment system, a principled alignment, and he slowly became more and more bitter, and he became more angry and more corrupt. And so his search for vengeance is now shaping him and defining him. And so when the player characters do seek revenge and they do kill this person, it actually bestows power back onto the god. And when they return with the stone swords and return to seek their reward, they find this god is starting to activate, and they realize that they are actually creating a monster, and that their job is then to be able to destroy this god again. So the twist being that the god is suddenly corrupt. So that was what I thought, that'd be a kind of cool twist. And then I needed to look at, well, what's the point A to point B kind of story? So I thought, I'll break it down into three main encounters. The first one would be searching for the slayer of the god. And that would take them through an old ruined city that had long ago been devastated by war and had been started to rebuild itself. And this is where the slayer of the god was residing. And so when they found this slayer, they'd have to do battle with them, and they'd obviously defeat the guy. And then after that, they'd come back, and then there would be a God of War style combat situation where the players had to fight on this god slowly forming up. So that's this kind of basic idea that I wanted to go with. And then I wanted to add some spice to the story. So I've talked a lot in quick tips how to kind of add new twists into your adventures. So I want to be able to do that and actually act on what I say. So first off, the spice of giving the players stone magical swords, which I kind of like the idea of these strange magical devices that they carry around them. And it could be anything. It could be sledgehammers. It could be stone. It could be swords that are lighter than they appear. So I like the idea of these potent weapons, and I also thought it'd be kind of cool if the god could speak through these weapons, so they are an extension of himself. So when the player characters slay the guy who killed the god, then it would be the god itself being part of that combat and drawing the energy back into itself again. I also wanted to have the fight with the Slayer on a great ziggurat, where the Slayer was right at the top, and these stone swords, whenever they were used, there would be an earthquake which would come with every successful hit that happens. And so you've got the ziggurat slowly crumbling and falling apart as this fight is going on. So you're having to dodge boulders and earth splitting apart and falling through into whatever's inside the ziggurat itself. So it adds a different kind of dynamic to it. I also thought that it would be really good with the final confrontation to be able to have this mechanic of climbing up this god as its arms start to join up to its hands and its head starts to reform. And what would it look like to be able to fight God of War style on this giant creature as it slowly rises up out of the earth itself. So I thought those were kind of some cool kind of spices that I could add to it. And I also wanted to add in the city itself, this ruined city, that it had developed its own economy, it had developed its own set of laws, and one of those laws being that no magical weapons were allowed within its walls. And so this would add a complication for the player characters to be able to get their stone weapons in, and the stone weapons are going to be necessary to defeat the bad guy, so it became essential. And so how do they do it? Do they sneak in? Do they try and fight their way through? Do they try and negotiate with the leaders of the city? So those are some of the elements that I wanted to add. And then I'll move on to developing characters from there. So which are the main characters which I need to develop, the ones that I need to focus on and make sure that they are fleshed out as much as possible. And so those would be the Forgotten God, the Slayer, and I really think that it would be interesting if I gave the leader of the ruined city a lot of personality. I like the idea of like a slave city with large corpulent men sort of lounging around the nobleman kind of thing, almost Game of Thrones style. So those are the three characters which I think will probably play the most part, and those are the ones which I'll invest the most time into. And then after that, once I've got the characters developed, I'll start to focus on the details. So I need to start looking at the mechanics behind what I've set up. Every game has its own mechanics, and so there'll be questions that'll come out of how things function. So I've got, why did the Slayer kill the god? So there's a background story to that which needs to be answered. Why does the city not allow magical weapons? What's the history there that's made it that way? And how do the magical stone weapons work? What are the stats? And what do I need to focus on there? And what are the mechanics behind how the fallen god will start to build itself together again? And likewise for the ziggurat, with it collapsing, what are the mechanics there that I need to put in place and think about before the game starts? So after that, once I've done all that, that's the basic story there, I will rewrite the whole thing. And I will go through it again, and I'll cut the things I don't like out of the story, and I'll add in bits that I do like. I might add in an extra twist there, or I might personalize the story more for the player characters that are in it. And I'll work on what are the weaknesses of the player characters and how can I exploit those, and what are the strengths that I can work with from the player characters so that they can feel like they're going to have epic moments themselves. So that's my basic concept for how I develop a story, and each time I'll keep refining how I do it. But at the moment, this is the basic way that I've been making adventures for the games that you've been watching. So I hope that inspires you. I hope it gives you a few tips for when you're crafting your adventures. I really encourage you to take inspiration from what you see around you, or from movies that you've seen and books that you've read, that you just take a little element from it and then you can blow it up and turn it into an entire story. So that's all from me. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe and comment, and if you'd like to check out our website at www.dicestorm.com, you'll find some of these articles and information for you to take further inspiration from. I'm John, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.